Long before humans, Pokeballs, or even the regions we know, there was nothing. Until, from the void, came a single egg. And from that egg hatched Arceus, the original one. With 1,000 arms, figurative or otherwise, Arceus began shaping existence. Time, space, and antimatter were born through the creation of Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina. Each were given reign over their own domain, setting the rules of reality in motion. But Arceus wasn't done. It summoned Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, beings of knowledge, emotion, and willpower. These three would give the sentience and depth to the life that was soon to come. They were the sparks of the soul in a universe just learning how to breathe. Here's where it gets interesting. This is the same era that may have birthed the unknown. Theories suggest that the unknown are fragments of primordial psychic energy, possibly from the same realm as the creation trio. Their strange glyph-like bodies hint that they may have been the very language of creation, the code that wrote reality itself. As time settled and the cosmos cooled, Arceus stepped back, and from the breath of the new world came Mew. Not a god, but something just as important: life itself. Mew is said to contain the DNA of every Pokémon. In myth, it is the ancestor of all species, a sort of living blueprint. But unlike Arceus, Mew was playful, curious, and untethered. Its movements were natural and instinctual, not divine. It didn't rule creation, it lived in it. But if Mew was the first Pokémon to freely roam the new world, then it is very likely that early Pokémon biology, evolution, abilities, even typings, stemmed from its ever-shifting genetic code. Some scientists in universe even theorize that Mew's DNA can adapt on the fly, giving rise to regional diversity and Pokémon forms over time. Ancient tablets and ruins found in Sinnoh, Johto, and Unova regions seem to depict Mew-like figures interacting with early humans, or possibly even preceding them. These murals suggest that Mew's presence was foundational in the earliest cultures of the Pokémon world. And the unknown, still here, watching. Scholars argue that they may have served Mew, or perhaps were drawn to its unmatched psychic energy. Some believe the unknown were the first to observe evolution itself, and recorded it like a living archive of history. It is at this point in time that balance began forming, between Pokémon, nature, and the first sentient observers of the world. And that sets the stage for the arrival of humanity. Arceus created Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf to gift the knowledge, emotion, and willpower to the new world. These traits form the foundation of the human consciousness. They are hidden within their lakes, guardians watching as history unfolds. But as early Pokemon grew stronger and more territorial, could their conflicts have set back the growth of the world? Destroyed early civilizations before humanity had a chance to rise? Was there a lost age, a reset in history? Celebi appears during this time as a temporal guardian, not a creator like others, but a protector of the timeline's natural order. Only interferes if major balance is threatened, foreshadowing its appearances in Johto and future distortions. Long before the structured clans of Hisui, before humanity spread across regions, there existed an age we barely have record of. It's what we'll call the Forgotten Age. A time so ancient, most of its events exist only in fragmented myth and ruins scattered across the world. But here's my theory. What if the earliest world of Pokemon and humans had already begun, only to be destroyed? Throughout the lore, we see whispers of great calamities, ancient Pokemon like Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza warring over the land and the sea. The Regititans, embodiments of the elemental forces, were locked away in chambers deep underground. Even Pokemon like Xerneas and Yveltal, or even Zygarde, seem to be tied into the balance and catastrophe. This might not be coincidence. Imagine this: powerful, legendary Pokemon, each representing dominion over part of nature, growing hostile toward one another. Battles for territory, supremacy, or preservation may have spiraled into full-blown global chaos. Clashing storms, quakes, floods, and voids ripping through the land. Civilizations, maybe even the first human settlements, could have risen during this period, only to be erased by the divine battles. It's a reset moment in Pokemon history, one we never fully see, but always feel. The silence between early creation myths and the structured world of Hisui might not be a gap of time, but a veil drawn over a mass extinction event. We know that many legendaries are sealed, hidden, or slumbering in deep places, not celebrated but contained. What if these weren't worshipped, but feared, locked away to stop the cycle from ever happening again? After the presumed reset of the Forgotten Age, the world lay quiet. The catastrophic forces of the ancient legendaries may have burned themselves out, fallen into slumber, or been sealed away by the very fabric of nature. And in that silence, humanity slowly returned. We pick up the timeline in the region known as Hisui, the earliest known society in the Pokémon canon, later renamed Sinnoh. Hisui wasn't just the backdrop of the legend's Arceus, it was the cradle of the new Pokémon world. It's here that the human and Pokémon relationship as we know it began to take shape. But it wasn't immediate harmony. In this era, Pokémon were still wild, unpredictable, and dangerous. People feared them. Entire towns like Jubilife were fortified, and Pokeballs were still a new invention, made of apricorns, more steampunk than sleek tech. What makes Hisui so pivotal is that it introduces us to the proto-organizations that will evolve into the modern ones. The Galaxy Expedition Team, a predecessor of Team Galactic. The Diamond and Pearl clans, early groups built on the oral traditions and worship of the powerful Pokemon like Dialga and Palkia. And of course, the rise of Professor Laventon, who brought structure to the active Pokemon research. What's also key is that the humans began to mythologize about what they didn't understand. Time and space themselves became sacred, with Dialga and Palkia eventually being seen not as just powerful Pokemon, but as deities. And in the background, Arceus, the original one, silently observes it all. We see the first steps towards structured religion, Pokemon classification, and even ancestor lineages that hint at modern characters like Cyrus, Professor Rowan, and Volkner. This is the moment where human culture and Pokemon mythology begin to intertwine, the critical shift from survival to understanding. And let's not forget about the noble Pokemon, blessed or enraged by strange celestial energy, foreshadowing events and power systems that may return in Legends ZA. From survival to civilization, as generations passed, humans no longer merely lived beside Pokemon. They began to thrive with them. Communities became kingdoms, heroes were born, and legends took shape in both myth and memory. This was the time when men and Pokemon stood side by side to protect and shape the world. Across various regions, legendary tales were born, stemming from Sinnoh people's worship of Arceus and its creations, to the hero and the twin dragons of Unova, even the ancient kings of Galar tied to Zacian and Zamazenta, and the Kalos War, a devastating conflict that culminated in the use of the ultimate weapon and gave rise to the Eternal Floette. But as with all empires, peace gave way to power, and where power grows, so too does war. Kingdoms began to weaponize Pokemon. Galar forged an army with tales of knights and champions. Kalos fell into ruin after war, leading to AZ's tragic use of the ultimate weapon. The Univin hero was split between ideals and truth, leading to the birth of Reshiram and Zekrom. For the first time, Pokemon were no longer seen only as partners, but as soldiers, and sometimes, weapons of war. In times of imbalance, legendary and mythical Pokemon appeared as forces of nature, correctors. Zygarde, the Order Pokemon, kept balance in Kalos. Ho-Oh revived the beasts of Johto after a great fire, symbolizing the rebirth after the ruin. Even the many battles between Groudon and Kyogre were halted by Rayquaza. Many of these legendaries might serve a higher purpose, enforcing the balance dictated by Arceus, or perhaps a deeper cosmic order we'll only begin to understand. This gave birth to a new type of individual, the trainer. Not just a warrior, but a guide, a partner, a student of both battle and bond. The idea of traveling with Pokemon, mastering types, and forming lifelong partnerships began here. In some cultures, this evolved into the foundation of the Pokemon League, or even the champion system. For the first time, humans began to systematically study Pokemon, not as just partners or legends, but as living organisms. The foundation of Pokemon biology begins. classifying Pokemon by type, habitat, and behavior. Legends were written down in books, no longer passed by word of mouth alone. Regions like Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn began forming formal Pokemon research groups. The ancestors of Professors Oak, Elm, Birch, and even some may say Bill, began organizing Pokemon data into early Pokédex-like logs. This age also marked the beginning of human invention. Not just castles and roads, but science, exploration, and the earliest forms of Pokeballs. We begin to see references to capturing, training, and researching Pokemon. Primitive Pokeballs evolve from apricorns to devices with sealing mechanisms. Pokemon battling becomes a symbol of status, honor, and eventually, sport. This era wasn't just about new discoveries, but recovering old ones. And then came the rediscovery that changed everything. Mew is discovered in South America, possessing the DNA of every known Pokemon. Research into Mew's DNA sparks the beginning of genetic engineering. Ancient myths are now cross-referenced with modern data, and Mew is deemed the progenitor of all Pokemon. From Mew's discovery came both knowledge and consequence. Scientists cloned Mew, giving rise to Mewtwo, a Pokemon not born of nature, but of human ambition. The scientific era brought clarity, but it also brought hubris. And in that tension between wonder and control, the world braced for a new kind of evolution. Still, amid the breakthroughs, the world moved forward. Pokemon leagues were formalized, trainers became champions, and a global Pokemon society began to form. Gyms were institutionalized. The Elite Four and Champion system became widespread. International trade routes and tournaments emerged. Pokemon habitats were mapped and protected through conservation. And yet, the more humans discovered, the more they pushed the limits. Artificial Pokemon, shadow Pokemon, dimension-ripping technology, all signs that the world still walks a delicate balance between brilliance and devastation. This sets up the rise to Team Rocket, Team Galactic, Plasma, and the like, and the growing presence of Ultra Beasts, dimensional rifts, and energy-related catastrophes. From myth to memory, and from memory to machine, the story of Pokemon continues, but even now, questions linger. What lies in the alternate timelines, in other dimensions, in the stars above, or the voids below?